She never said it out loud, but I think she believed that towels held memory. The way she folded them, soft, slow, always in thirds, felt like a kind of prayer, not religious. Something older than that. Something bone deep. I would sit on the edge of the washing machine, legs swinging just above the basket, watching her hands work, thumbs pressed into cotton, corners aligned like quiet promises. "Corners matter," she said once, without looking up. "They're what make things feel finished." I didn't understand, but I watched the way she smoothed each wrinkle, how the fabric warmed from her touch, how even the oldest towel, threadbare, almost transparent in the center, deserved the same care. Later, I would come to recognize that tone in her fingers, the same one she used to brush crumbs from the table or turn pages in a book she'd read too many times to count. There was no rush in her body, no sense that folding was a chore. It was rhythm. One towel, then another, stacked in gentle silence like she was building a shelter made of softness. I remember the smell. Sun-dried cotton, a trace of lavender from the drawer liners she cut herself. The way the towels still held the heat from the line, like they had learned how to store the sun. Once she let me try. My fingers too small, my folds too uneven. She didn't correct me, just unfolded it and began again. "Corners matter," she repeated, as if it wasn't about towels at all. Now, when I fold, even decades later, my hands still move the way hers did. Still smooth the crease, still press into softness, as if I, too, could preserve a moment by getting the edge just right. I didn't know it then, but that laundry room was the first place I learned what it meant to hold something without needing to fix it, only to make it feel at home. As I grew older, I noticed something about the way she folded. It wasn't just habit, it was armor. When life tilted, a cousin's diagnosis, a friend's betrayal, a silence at the dinner table that no one explained, she folded more. She would take down towels that were already folded, just to do them again. Not angrily, not obsessively, but as if alignment could stitch the world back together. I remember once after a week when my father's voice had gone sharp and low. I found her in the laundry room, kneeling beside a basket she hadn't carried in, her back to the door, the same towel folded, unfolded, folded again. I didn't say anything. She didn't either. She was smoothing something bigger than terry cloth. And I realized she didn't fold to finish. She folded to stay standing. There was comfort in precision. A corner lined just right, a crease smoothed twice, as if control over the linen gave her just enough strength to survive the places in life where there were no clean lines. Later, I would find myself doing the same. After losses, after endings, I would wipe down counters that weren't dirty, refold things no one would see. Not because I needed order, but because the ritual gave me a place to put my hands when my heart had nowhere to land. They call it anxiety now, or coping. But to her, it was prayer by way of fabric. I think she was teaching me how to hold grief without naming it. How to let the body do something simple, something repetitive until the soul caught up. Because sometimes you don't need to move forward. You just need to fold something and feel, for a little while, that the world will stay where you placed it. I didn't notice at first. It was small, a corner not quite aligned, a fold that slanted slightly left. The towels still warm but stacked a little off-center. I stood in the doorway expecting her to fix it. She didn't. She reached for the next towel and folded it the same way, a little loose, a little soft. I felt a strange pull in my chest, like watching someone mispronounce a word they've always spoken fluently. "Everything okay?" I asked. She nodded, but didn't meet my eyes. "It doesn't have to be perfect today," she said, tucking the fold with one gentle pat, then leaving it be. She walked away before I could answer, and in the stillness she left behind, I felt something shift. Not just in the towels, in her. There was a slowing, a softening, as if she'd carried something for too long, and this was her way of setting it down. It wasn't a collapse, it was a yielding, a quiet permission to be a little uneven, a little unfinished. She didn't stop folding, but she stopped correcting. And somehow that small imperfection held more grace than all the years of symmetry before it. I watched her that week. She moved a little slower, but smiled more. She hummed again while cooking, even if the tune drifted. She told a story at dinner and forgot the ending, but laughed instead of searching for it. Something was unspooling, not unraveling, just softening around the edges. And for the first time, I understood that letting go doesn't always look like release. Sometimes it looks like letting the towel be a little crooked and choosing not to fix it, because healing isn't always in the fold. Sometimes it's in the space where we let things be as they are and still call them cared for. It didn't happen right away. Even after watching her soften, my hands still chased the lines, still folded with a kind of pressure I didn't fully recognize until it left me sore. The corners had to match. The bed had to be smoothed flat. I refolded things no one would see. I told myself it was care, but somewhere underneath, it was fear. Fear that if I stopped keeping order, everything else would fall apart. One afternoon, I dropped a washcloth. It landed unfolded, one edge flopped over like a wing, and I just stared at it. I remember thinking she'd have let it stay, and I didn't pick it up. Not right away. I made tea instead. I left the cloth on the floor for 12 minutes. I know because I checked, and in that space of not reacting, not correcting, I felt something loosen in my chest. It was the beginning of a different kind of folding, not of towels, but of my expectations. I began to notice how often I tried to manage small things when I couldn't control the big ones, how I filled silences with tasks and grief with motion. And I remembered her hands not fixing what didn't need fixing. I started letting dishes dry in the rack instead of wiping them to a shine. Let the laundry sit an extra hour before sorting, and something strange happened. Nothing fell apart. The world didn't collapse because I let a corner go unlined. I was still here, still whole. And slowly the act of leaving something unfinished became its own quiet ritual. Not laziness, not indifference, but a kind of gentle defiance against the part of me that believed love meant effort and stillness meant failure. I began to trust that care could exist without control, that letting go wasn't the opposite of holding on. It was simply another way of loving what no longer needed to be pressed into place. Years have passed now. The house is quieter, the baskets smaller, but I still fold towels the way she did, almost. Not with her precision, not with her rhythm, but with something softer, something that feels more like breathing than remembering. There's one towel I never use, faded blue, edges slightly frayed. It still smells like the drawer where she kept it. Cedar and lavender sachets that never fully faded. I take it out sometimes when I'm not sure what I need, not to dry anything, just to hold it, to let it sit in my lap while the kettle warms or the sun climbs the kitchen wall. It doesn't speak, but it remembers. Not the big things, just the gestures, the way her hands curved around fabric, the weight she gave to small moments, the silence she trusted to do part of the work. Sometimes I fold it, sometimes I don't, and when I do, it's never perfect. I leave the edge a little off, not to be careless, but to honor the day she did the same. That moment lives in me now, the day she let the fold falter and didn't reach back to correct it. It was her last quiet lesson, not in laundry, but in letting go, in allowing things to remain a little undone, a little unfinished. Because life is like that. We fold what we can, we carry what we must, and the rest, we lay down gently, without pressing out every wrinkle. So now, when I stack the towels, I press the corners softly, not for symmetry, but for presence, as if saying, I see you. I'm still here. I've made peace with the parts I couldn't fix. And in that stack, crooked or not, she lives. Not in perfection, but in permission. There's a quiet that follows memory when it's been fully seen, not silence, but the hush that comes when nothing needs to be proven anymore. You've walked back through a ritual that never asked to be understood, only honored. She never said she was teaching, but her hands spoke clearly, in folds, in corners, in the grace of letting small things be beautiful, even when life felt uneven. And now you carry that with you, not as a routine, but as a rhythm. When you fold something soft, a towel, a memory, a regret, let it be imperfect. Let the edges breathe, because letting go isn't always about release. Sometimes it's simply the quiet decision to stop smoothing what was never meant to be flattened. May your breath be steady, your rituals slow, your memories gentle in your hands. You don't need to finish everything tonight. You just need to rest in the place where something sacred was once folded with love.